Economy Compass radio show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. Welcome into our show today. Tim Kulhanek in the Lincoln office, and I have Jeff Gove in the Kearney office. Now, happy weekend, fellas.
Happy weekend.
Hi, happy weekend.
Why do smart people make emotional money decisions, Tim Kulhanek?
Well, because dealing with your money is really difficult. So our notes here say behavioral finance shows us that emotions like fear and greed are often louder than logic. Case in point, during the 2020 COVID crash, investors pulled, wait for it, $326 billion out of mutual funds and ETFs. Whoa. Mutual funds and ETFs. Just before markets rebounded 60% in the next 6 months. Ouch. That hurts. So here's another one. After liberation. So a lot of it, why do people do it? Because, like, the people on CNBC and Bloomberg News, like, some of it's good, like, genuine, like, interesting, helpful, insightful information. You get an education. But it's still entertainment, right? So what gets headlines is, like, the edgy stuff, you know, and the scary, spooky stuff. And so I'm working on putting together a TV program right now that talks about behavioral finance and talks about, you know, the two things that drive the market, fear and greed, and be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy, like the old Warren Buffett sayings, right? Well, if you look at some headlines from around April, late March, early April of 2025, just last year, you'll see things like, is the U.S. no longer the place to invest? Oh, and another headline says, after Trump's tariffs, investors seek growth elsewhere. U.S. economy potentially, with fears, the U.S. economy may soon be on a slide. Like, all this spooky doom and gloom type of headlines. And so what do people do? They sell billions of dollars worth of assets at the worst possible time. So that's leading up to Liberation Day, let's say. And then, like, the market bottoms out, like, I don't know if it was April 8th or 10th, whatever it was, right? Early April. And then it rallies massively. And then the headlines that followed were, wow, investors that sold during that time period, like, they locked in trillions of dollars of losses. How foolish could they have possibly been? Well, you told them to, you scared them into doing it. Like, you are the one that actually told them to do it in a sense, because you're like, oh, well, it might be time to, pack up shop and head for the hills because this is really bad. And then people take that, it maybe isn't advice per se, but they pick up what you're putting down, the implication, and they act on it. And anymore, like, I could literally, like, right now, I could be like, all right, well, I'm just going to use Face ID. I'm into my brokerage account, and boom, I've sold something. Wow. And so, like, there's nothing stopping you from making knee-jerk reactions anymore. There's no buffer, barrier, or seasoning period before the time that your brain says, I need to freak out, and you actually executing that kind of self-sabotage.
All right, Mr. Gove, how can retirees stay focused when the market goes bonkers and people want to grab their device just like Tim tried to demonstrate there? Let's get the brokerage deal sold. I mean, how can retirees stay focused? Just stay away from their phone.
Yeah, that's one way. Put the phone down. The easiest way to stay focused is just by having a plan. You know, for us as financial advisors, when the market's going down, our role is more of a counselor. You know, people are calling and potentially calling and saying, market's falling, am I losing my money? You know, those kind of conversations. Should I pull my money out? And we're able to walk through that with them. And we can also test their plan. You know, if the market's down 10% and let's say you're down 5%, we can test your plan, look at your plan and see, has it even impacted your plan? And typically, it's not significantly impacting your overall plan. And we have to remember a lot of these are really short-term pullbacks in the market. So 2020 when COVID started, market fell really fast, but it recovered really fast. Just last year in 2025, the first, it was like March and April where the market was coming down. Well, it recovered really, really quickly. So if you make those knee-jerk reactions, and like Tim was talking about earlier, you lock in those losses, you're trying to find a place to get back in. We look back at 2008. That's when I got in this industry.
Oh.
And great time to get in when the market is
Interesting.
tanking.
Yeah.
But I met with people, and I think Tim probably has too, even in 2012, that were still sitting on the sidelines because they pulled out. They lost 40% of their money. But when the market's shooting up, it's hard to make the decision to just dump everything back in because if you turn on the news, there's still concerns. We think the market's going to go down further. There's all these different risks. So you didn't want to dump your money all back in at once. So we're 4 years down the road and that money's still sitting on the sideline. So you locked in a 40% loss. But another thing that you missed was time. You just missed a 4 years of your time horizon that you're sitting on the sideline getting eroded by inflation.
Ooh.
So it's bad. So having a plan where you can stick with it, a diversified portfolio where it's designed to weather some of the storms. Not to say you're never going to lose money. That's not realistic. But if the market's down 40%, you just don't want to lose 40% because those losses have a much bigger impact than gains. But from an emotional standpoint, bringing it back to that, having a plan that you can stick with and that is designed to be tested and monitored as you move forward is critical, especially as you get close to retirement.
I find it interesting that everything I talk to you about, you say, well, it starts with the plan. Well, it starts with the plan. Well, that's fair.
Yeah. It does start with a plan, Jackie.
Well,
Right.
winging it isn't the plan, Jackie.
No.
Come on.
All right, here's the number, 866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge, 866-295-5146. But in the case where somebody is watching the news or watching their balance or looking at their brokerage account, instead of hitting sell, they could just call you and say, hey, listen, I'm freaking out about this. Is it impacting my retirement? And you just say no, go golfing or whatever.
The other thing that you have to think about is, for the last several years, gold has been the topic. You turn on the radio.
Boy, here we are.
You should sell your IRA and invest it all in gold, which, over the last couple of years, that would have been really good advice.
But not now.
Right. But you have to think about where those people are coming from. They want to sell you gold. And those TV or radio commercials, if you're on XM radio, that's very, very expensive. Mm-hmm. So they are going to make a lot of money by you selling your whole IRA and investing it in gold with them. So
no, they're looking out for my best interest, Jeff.
You could be right, Tim. I bet you're right. They're fiduciaries, right?
They're not fiduciaries. No,
Yeah,
they're trying to sell you something.
Yeah. So, you have to look at it from that perspective too. Just understand where your information is coming from and that there might be, some bias behind it. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
My goodness, I should say so. Can automation help anybody in this situation, fellows? I hate to say AI. What do you think, Mr. Kulhanek?
Automation, yes. Computer trading has been around for a long, long time. And so one of the things that we do is we use some strategies that are very mechanical in nature by design. And what I mean by that is we're seeking strategies that can remove emotion from the investment decision-making process. So like with our portfolios, we subscribe to what's called a core satellite model, which means we don't want to just throw money in the S&P 500 and like ride it out. I know that that's sometimes like the, offhand advice that you hear like, oh, well, Warren Buffett says, but you're not Warren Buffett, okay? And if he lost 30% or 40% of his total net worth, he's still a multi-billionaire, which is why not take like 1 or 2% of your net worth if you're listening. I'm guessing he's listening, and throw it into an NIL sort of arrangement for Nebraska so we can, win some football games and never lose a basketball game ever again. As long as the refs actually know what a charge is. But beyond that, if you invest in the S&P 500, you're literally just rolling the dice on the biggest companies continuing to win year over year, and it doesn't prepare you for a changing of the guard or for, a situation like last year, for example, where all of a sudden international stocks start to outperform U.S. stocks, where only 2 of the 7 of the Mag 7 outperform the S&P 500 itself. because the S&P is a market cap weighted index, and in and of itself, it's a very volatile index that, again, can have those big swings that Jeff was talking about. And we know losses hurt more than gains help. So you need a balanced, comprehensive approach to retirement. That's what we do at Stonebridge. And if you're not 100% certain that is what you're getting right now, whether you have an advisor or not, that would be a reason to call the number that Jackie's going to give you right now.
866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge, 866-295-5146. Get that balanced opinion, that fiduciary, mandatory fiduciary way of handling you. Also, StonebridgeIWM.com.
Is your retirement being eaten up by financial termites like hidden fees, inflation, and avoidable taxes? Call today for a complimentary financial review so we can help you root out these retirement killers.
What's the first step to defining our dream retirement?
I think the first step is you got to save some money.
All right.
Probably a little bit before our list of steps here. You got to make sure that you do the hard work, the disciplined work.
Yeah, fine.
Right? So, in other words, when I'm working, I had a call the other day. It was a referral from a client up in Yankton, and they reached out and they're like, "Hey, we know, we'll call her Elizabeth. My wife works with her. We've been meaning for the last year to call you." That's how it usually goes. I know there's people out there that are going to listen to this program that have been like, "I've been meaning to call those guys." I'm 100% certain of it because it happens all the time, right? I've been meaning to call you for over a year. Yeah, I've changed jobs a few times. I've got 3 or 4 old 401ks. I'm not really sure if I'm doing the right thing. I think I am, but I don't know. That's not what I do. I work on power lines. I'm a lineman. I don't do finance. I know we take care of our finances, but I don't do investing. I don't do retirement planning. And it led to a deeper conversation. I actually was just emailing with him this morning, and we're going to be meeting again here next week. And it turns out that they were way ahead of schedule. They're doing great. They'll be able to most likely retire early, but they're doing some things that there's always a few tweaks. A lever that you can pull here, a knob or a dial that you can twist here that maybe puts them maybe accelerates that path and gives them even more success, right? And more discretionary income and more tax efficient retirement than what they would have maybe experienced had they continued just on the path that they were on. And that was certainly the case here, where they weren't putting money into a certain type of account that would be a lot better for them long term, especially given the fact that they're not in that high of a tax bracket today. So defining, okay, how much do I actually need to be saving? So the first thing that's going to happen when folks give us a call and they come in and meet with one of our experienced advisors is we're going to sit down, and in that first meeting, we've actually got a meeting process. We call it the NAVI, the NAVI, NAVI navigation, right? NAVI process with Stonebridge. It's a 3-step process. NAVI it's an acronym. It's needs, analysis, vision, and implementation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, what are your needs? What do you have going on right now? What is the situation you find yourself in? Are you 59 and a half and you're wondering about early retirement, or you're trying to make sure that you're okay? I'm at that point where I've begun my initial descent into retirement, landing. Right. I want to make sure that, I don't pull the landing gear too early. I want to make sure that it's a smooth ride, that I get to the gate safely where I need to be, because the two most dangerous, if you will call it dangerous, more challenging portions of using air travel as an example is takeoff and landing, right? It's not when you're 30,000 feet in the air and on autopilot. So I need somebody who's an experienced navigator who's landed the plane before. That's not me if I'm the person calling. I'm not, I'm the lineman, or I'm the whatever it is I do for a living. I'm looking for somebody that can help me with that. Great, we've got a team of people. There's 11 of us here that can help you with that. But let's get to know what you actually want to do. So step 1, A, is making sure you're saving the right amount, right? So if you're in that bracket of people or group of people, or maybe you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, making sure that you have your laser designator pointed at the right, in the right direction, so you know that what your true north is and that you're on the right path. Step 1B is, okay, now I've arrived at that. I think I'm doing a really good job. I'm ready to begin my descent into retirement, my initial descent, making sure that I have a plan that's customized to me, that looks at what I want to do, my unique financial situation, whether that's I'm going to travel or I'm going to spend time with family or I'm going to be a snowbird, whatever that looks like. Let's get to know you. That's the needs portion of that 3-step process. That's where we like to begin. 1A, then focus on when people come in here, it's that 1B. Where are you at today?
Very good. This is the number 866-295-5146 to call Stonebridge. Let's get this Navi in motion. 866-295-5146. So is your lineman and his wife, are they so super excited because they finally called you?
Yeah, honestly, we've had great correspondence.
Great.
We do recap emails here. So after that meeting, I sent a recap email, said, hey, great conversation. Here's what we talked about. Here's what you told me is important to you. Here's what I need to gather from you. And I hadn't heard back, so I followed up, and he goes, oh my gosh, I haven't been checking my email because of the storm.
Okay.
I'm down here in Mississippi restoring power to people. Haven't been checking my email. Here's what I have access to on my laptop. When I get home, I'll send you the rest of the stuff so you have what you need for our meeting. So like that's very common. Like people, like life gets, schedules take over, right? And life has to come first in your career and what you have to take care of. But like we can correspond. We work with people across the country because you don't, like with technology today, you don't necessarily have to be right across the table. I love being face to face with folks, but it's not a requirement anymore.
Right. This is 2026 is a year of transformations, I feel like, and transitions. So, Mr. Gove, on this subject matter, how does or why does a timeline make this thing more doable? I mean, you can't just plunge in and do a polar plunge on it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the sooner you get started, the better. You know, the longer runway you give yourself, the better off you're going to be. You know, and I'm sure Tim's experienced the same thing, but I've had a lot of people here recently from the radio show, from TV, from workshops that, they come in and they say, well, I'm happy with the guy that I have, but I just need to get a second opinion because I've listened. You guys talk about taxes. Well, my guy never talks about taxes. You guys talk about estate planning. I've never even considered the estate plan. You know, what I want to happen later. I'm more worried about, well, am I going to be able to retire the way that I want to? So one thing that we do in the first appointment is we lay out the different tax buckets when we're looking at tax planning. So you have the taxable bucket, the tax deferred bucket, and the tax-free bucket. And I can tell you it's probably almost 100% of the time. It's got to be high 90% of the time that there's small tweaks that you can make just with those tax buckets that make a massive difference when you look at the way that you're going to retire. Are you going to be able to retire? How much money are you leaving to your kids? How much money are you leaving to the IRS? These are small tweaks, and some of them are free. They don't cost you anything. Moving money from that taxable account to that tax-free bucket, we can do that for free. So if you are working with someone, again, you can't get a second opinion from the person that gave you the first, like Tim likes to say. So call in, set a time to come in, and we can review that with you. Again, the tax planning, that's where all the difference is made. It's all about what you keep. It doesn't matter what you make. It's what you keep that counts.
Here's the phone number. It sounds like a good time for me to give it. 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. The show is Retirement Compass Radio Show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And if you hear the show week after week and think, I'm going to call him. Yep, I'm going to call him. Boy, I need to call him. Yep, I thought about calling him last year in 2024 too. Well, here's the time. Now is the time, 866-295-5146.
As Americans, we strive for better. From a better house to a better career to a better life for our children and grandchildren. Better has become the American way. When it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? Does it mean more income, a flexible lifestyle, better solutions? A better retirement begins with a financial plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better.
1031, you guys deal with a lot of numbers and a lot of acronyms and things of this nature, so I'm glad all I have to say is Retirement Compass Radio Show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. Reachable on 866-295-5146. That's about as deep as I go in the numbers, Mr. Gove. Tell me about is it a 1031?
Yeah, it's called a 1031 exchange, which is a like-kind exchange. So you're exchanging real estate for real estate. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, I had a gal come in the office yesterday, and she's selling a farm. Unfortunately, she came in yesterday. They're closing today. Oh. And it's about $1.3 million worth of real estate. Her cost basis is really low. She didn't know exactly what it was, but let's say for example purposes, it was $200,000, which is what she paid for this land, and it's worth $1.3 million. So if she were to sell it outright, take the money, she's going to have long-term capital gains of $1.1 million, as long as she held it over a year, which she has. But what her tax preparer had her do was to sell it on contract. So she's getting about $450,000 up front, which will all be taxed as a long-term capital gain.
It will, okay.
And then the rest is going to be paid out over 7 years. Now, the gentleman that's buying the land from her has the cash, and he would prefer to pay cash. She doesn't need the cash. She needs some up front because she's going to buy a house in Lincoln, but she doesn't need the rest of the cash. Her goal is to leave the rest of it to her kids. So the downside of doing what she's doing is she's going to pay long-term capital gains on all of those distributions because she's selling it on contract. So this $450,000 she's going to pay tax on until she gets down to her basis, which in our example we're using $200,000. She would get that out tax-free. So she's going to have to pay the tax on it, and she doesn't need the money. So instead, what she could have done was do a 1031 exchange. So that money, instead of coming to her, would go to an intermediary that holds that money in escrow. She could still take out the $450,000 to go buy her house, and she would pay long-term capital gains on that. The rest could be invested in other real estate. And we work with a lot of people on real estate investments where, if you don't want to own a rental, you don't want to have the headache of fixing toilets and things like that or chasing rent. Mm-hmm. There are investments that you can make where you get that tax deferral, so you can do an exchange into, maybe it's multifamily in Kansas City or, somewhere in the South, Texas, more heavily populated areas. But it's nothing you have to manage. But that the taxes are deferred. So in that case, if she would have done that, she'd pay tax on that $450,000. The rest is tax deferred. If she would get income from it, which right now, Tim, probably 4 to 5%.
Yeah, it's fair. Close to 4, I'd say.
Probably in that range.
Cash on cash. That's not before, I get 4% and then I have property tax. No. It's net of those. That's what you actually receive.
Yeah. So she could have deferred it. And then when she dies, her kids would get a step up in cost basis. So they could sell those investments once they, if it was a house that you bought, they could sell the house and not pay any long-term capital gains on that. So essentially the tax would never have to be paid unless tax law changes. But instead, she's going to pay the tax every year as she moves forward. So there are options available to you. So if you're looking at ways, if you're not selling real estate because you don't want to have to pay the taxes, or you don't want to move it into something that you have to manage and turns into a big headache, just know there are options out there for you where you don't have to manage it and you can just get paid on a monthly basis.
Here's the number, 866-295-5146. Call and get a strategy together with Stonebridge. Obviously, Mr. Gove can walk you through this, 866-295-5146. Or, of course, Mr. Kulhanek, but Stonebridge Wealth Systems.
Or one of our experienced advisors.
Very handsome, too.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, Life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Well, in a volatile market, you tend to, not to go back to and belabor the point, you tend to be more susceptible to the emotional, behavioral type financial mistakes that we talked about in the first segment or two, right? Where, hey, I don't feel like there's anything, I have no safety net, there's no seatbelt, and sometimes you're like, if you got a crazy driver, you feel a little bit more comfortable if you have a seatbelt to hold you in. And some investment funds come with a theoretical or hypothetical seatbelt of some kind or safety net of some kind, and some don't. So, remember in the first segment where I said, hey, a lot of people, that shorthand, offhand advice is like, oh, just put all your money in the S&P 500. I said, well, there's reasons why that's not always a great idea. And I said it's market cap weighted, it's highly concentrated. The top 10 stocks is like 40% of the entire index. Even in a taxable account where an ETF is more tax efficient than a mutual fund, there's probably other strategies you could use, like some direct indexing that's going to be more tax efficient and help you avoid a scenario where eventually you need money and you have to pay a big capital gain. Well, similar, there's something we call factor investing. So factor investing would be like, oh, I'm going to look at a few different factors. So maybe dividends or momentum or, let me think, hedged equity. There's a lot of different factors that, quality, that's different than just relying on size. If you're just using size as a metric for performance, again, it works until it doesn't. And so with risk managed strategies, you get more diversification. So for example, in a down market, let's look at 2022, down market, growth stocks really struggled, inflation and interest rates went up. Value stocks tend to do quite well in that environment, dividend paying stocks. And so those maybe were flat for the year. And even if they were down 5%, if you had a yield of 3, I only lost 2 because my total return is what I'm looking at. I don't necessarily care if I went down by 2 but got no dividends, or if I went down by 5 but I got 3% in dividends, I'm still down 2%. It's literally the same. It's just a different path. If you took the left or the right, you ended up at the same location. And so with risk managed strategies where they come into play, again, in a down market, is we use a lot of, again, I said core satellite. On the satellite side, you might have some buffer ETFs, right? So the general premise is, and this isn't specific advice, mileage may vary, but the general premise of a buffer ETF is, hey, you know what? I'm going to base off of a reference asset, a reference index typically. So it could be the S&P 500. Let's just continue to use that. But rather than just dumping my money in the S&P 500 and writing it out, knowing that the max drawdown on that thing is, again, over 50%. I think it's 52% back from late 07 to early 09. Instead, I'm going to use a buffer for a portion of my portfolio. This isn't a one-size-fits-all. That doesn't exist. That's never a good idea to put all your money in one basket, all your eggs in one basket. But maybe it has parameters that says, hey, I'm protected, I'm buffered from the first 15% of loss. So if from January 1st of 26 to December 31st of 26 or January 1st of 27, if the market's down 20%, I am protected from, or I avoid the first 15%, and I only lose 5. And then conversely, on the upside, I'm going to give something up to get that protection, right? There's a trade-off, risk-reward paradigm. So if I'm able to avoid the first 15%, I might only get the first 12, 14, or 15% on the upside. But what I see people do is they think that they have to pivot to an annuity in order to achieve that type of protection or safety or peace of mind, however you want to phrase that. And that's not always the case. A lot of people will pivot to a really hot product right now is what's called a RILA, registered index link annuity. And, I was visiting with, you mentioned Chad, I was visiting with him, and Chad came to us from another firm, and they were big into RILAs. And I looked at it, and essentially this RILA was like a 5-year annuity. So he's locked in for 5 years, and it has the same like structure as far as your upside downside. You get a buffer on the downside, and you have a cap or a limit on the upside. But like the buffer was, I think, 10% in one he showed me, and the cap on the upside was like 15%. Now, in and of on its face, that sounds not bad, right? Hey, I avoid the first 10% of loss, and I can make 14 or 15 on the upside. But you give up liquidity for that. So those clients had to make a 5-year commitment. And I looked at what was available just in the broad market, and it's like an ETF that would be completely liquid. I could get to it any time. There's no lockup time period or anything like that. And I have one that has, let's say, a 9% buffer. So, okay, you get one more point as far as your downside threshold, your downside safety net protection level. But the upside was like 17 or 18%. And I have no lockup. Well, to me, again, I'm not giving specific advice or recommendations, but for most people, I would venture to guess that they would choose the liquid option and be willing to give up the 1 point on the downside if they're going to get not only 100% liquidity, but they get an extra 4 points on the upside. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why when we're talking about risk management, again, there's some stuff that it's okay to have it generally follow the market. You still want a diversified, balanced, comprehensive approach, but then you should have, we believe, investors should have these satellite positions that are going to augment your risk reward characteristics. So in a year where the market's up 20%, you might only get, in that example, let's say 15%, but if it's down 20%, I only lose 5. I got 25% of the loss, but 75% of the gain. That's how we believe you create an environment where you have a portfolio you can actually stick with, and you don't end up making those self-sabotaging type of poor decisions as you move through retirement.
866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge. Get that explanation for yourself in person, and it may or may not apply to your situation. 866-295-5146. You scared me a little bit by saying that annuity locked people up. It's not the case always, though, with different annuities, right?
Yeah, typically, I mean, there's going to be some sort of lockup period where, I mean, you can get some of your money out without a penalty, but there is going to be a period of time where if you take all of your money out at one time, you're going to pay a penalty. The one thing I wanted to jump in and add.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We talk a lot about taxes. If that was a non-qualified annuity that Tim was talking about where, it has that buffer, that grows tax deferred just by the definition of how an annuity works. So when you take that money out, you're going to pay income tax on it, on the gains. If that was in a brokerage account and we bought that buffered ETF that he was talking about, you don't pay tax until you sell that. But if you hold it over a year, it's a long-term capital gain, which right now, if you're in the 12% tax bracket, you don't pay long-term capital gains. So again, it doesn't matter how much you make. Even if the yield was a little bit higher on the RILA, it's about what you keep. You also your kids don't get a step up in basis. So somebody's going to pay the tax when it grows. Or the alternative is you don't need the annuity. And I'm not saying annuities are bad.
Right.
Like there are a lot of really good annuities.
Yeah.
We use annuities here. But there is a certain position or a certain time where we use those. Another thing that I've, just talking about annuities that I've run into here recently is, having really low caps. I've had a gal come in, she brought a statement, and the fee on the annuity was 1.3%. The cap on the S&P 500 was 2%. So if everything went perfectly right, she could make 0.7% per year. That's not a good option. Now, there was alternatives that we could move the money out of there. We could, even though she had a penalty, we could get a bonus from another company that would cover that penalty and then some, and put her in a position where her money's going to grow for her. But I've seen that a lot recently where the caps are so low that you're just not going to grow. So if you have an annuity where, I guess number one, it's invested in the market, so you haven't seen a lot of growth, that'd be a variable annuity. A lot of times we don't see growth there because the fees are so high. We see 3 3% plus in fees on
Yikes.
some of those variable annuities. So you have to be careful there. It's hard for you to make 6% when you're paying 4% in fees. So that could be a reason to come in and we could take a look at that for you. Or if you have, it's called an index annuity where the cap is 2 or 3%. I mean, you can get that guaranteed in a CD or in another type of annuity or more. So could be some options for you, even if there is still a surrender penalty on your contract.
That's very good to understand. And of course, it's not for everyone, and there's suitability at play here, right? But there's no reason to be afraid and run and hide when you hear the word annuity, because it could be quite beneficial. It just depends. I don't know. In 1 minute, can you tell me about the growth? Is there time for growth, room for growth in our retirement, Mr. Kulhanek?
Oh, yeah. There's room for growth. And let me just
Well, I
give you
don't mean our waistline from eating too many treats and going on too many vacations. Go ahead.
Look, my 5-year-old is calling me a fairly derogatory slur regarding my waistline.
Oh, dear.
And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's like, what did Brent say? He's being called a big back. So I don't want to be called a big back, okay? It's apparently the young folks, they call people that to make fun of them. So
Oh, devil.
it's tough, but there's room for growth. But everybody's situation is different, right? You might have a pension. You might have really good Social Security. You might have delayed till you're 70 and maximized it. You might not need a whole lot of income from your portfolio. You might need a lot of income. You might not want any risk. I know people who have plenty of savings, but they just don't want to risk anything. And there's solutions for each different niche, if you will, each different focus. And the thing is, at Stonebridge, it's not just one focus. It's not one size fits all. We literally, I'm saying this is great sincerity, we customize each and every plan that we design to make sure that it fits to you. You're not going to the outlet mall and the only store is open is Nike, and you just got to try to fit your fat foot into their narrow shoes.
Yes.
No. We're more of the Shields approach. We got all the different brands. We got all the different sizes and shapes and types, and you get to find something that truly fits and feels comfortable for you when you work with one of our experienced advisors. That's why we encourage you and invite you to reach out right away.
866-295-5146. 866-295-5146.
Did you ever think your retirement would be shared with our government? It's true. Your traditional 401k, IRA, pension, or similar retirement accounts are like a partnership with the IRS. Simply put, they want their tax dollars, and you have them. With our latest tax calculator, you can plug in your own numbers while sitting at home. To find out what your future tax liability could be, scan the QR code or go to stonebridgetaxbill.com.
I do have Mr. Gove in the Kearney office. And Jeff, I thought we could look at a couple of these, financial scenarios that could apply to one family or another who's listening to the program today. Kids have moved back in again. These folks, maybe they could finally settle into a quiet retirement, enjoy some time together, but now their 33-year-old is moving home just for a few months. It's been a year. How do you support adult children without jeopardizing their own retirement stability?
Yeah, that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
But, the easy answer for me, not being in those shoes, is you tell them no, is how you best support them and yourself. Because when you contribute to them, when you pay for their things, they're not learning those hard lessons that eventually they're going to have to learn, right? I mean, we've got to figure it out and get out on their own. And again, it's easy for me to sit here and say that. I've got clients that they know they're supporting their children way more than they should.
Really?
But, I've had hard conversations with them that, in some circumstances, it's you or them. It's your retirement or support them. You get to choose. It's your money, but you get to the point where that's literally what you're choosing. But more importantly, not that that's not important, but again, being that backstop for your kids is enabling behavior potentially that you don't want to enable.
You
So
don't
you
want it
gotta
to
be really
continue.
Right. Right.
You know, do you want to practice? Because you have 4 children. So let's have a couple practice no's out of you, Jeff Gove. No.
No.
No. I know I know. I love my grandchildren, but no. Wait,
Well,
you don't have grandchildren yet. Let's not jump the gun. Son.
No. I can say definitely no to that.
Yes.
But, I mean, my twins are getting ready to go to college. So they're graduating in May. And we're looking at colleges and doing the scholarship thing and the FAFSA and all that stuff. So that's something, to think about. And I was sitting in church the other day and I looked over at Aspen and about started bawling sitting there in church. I'm like, wow, this is about to change forever.
Forever.
That you're going to go to college and I don't want you to come back home. I want you to, but I don't want you to because we worked really hard raising you. And I want you to go be successful. God's got big plans for your life. And I don't want to stand in the way of, those plans coming to fruition. So it's a hard thing and not something I'm really looking forward to be honest. But it will be cool looking back and seeing all of the things that they're doing.
Oh, that's beautiful, Jeff.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
I'm going to hand out your number, 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. You can get in and talk to Mr. Gove at the Kearney office, and you guys can practice saying no together.
Yep. Tim's got a while.
I know he does, but your kids, my gosh, I can't believe it. So are you going to tell us where did they choose to go to school?
They're probably going to go where I went. I went to Evangel in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, that's not that far.
The Crusaders is what we used to be. They've changed it. I can't remember what they are now. But
Well, they were looking at a lot of schools.
yeah, well, they wanted to go to North Carolina, Wilmington. They wanted to look there, and maybe GCU in Phoenix. But I think I got them convinced. I can drive to Springfield. It's about 7, 8 hours.
I was saying it's not that far.
Yeah. So I want them to choose, but if I can nudge, that's okay too.
That's okay, too. I think so, too. All right. I've got another scenario here. Again, the Stonebridge phone number, 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. All right. This is the ever-popular question, dream house or downsize? If somebody is considering downsizing and maybe moving to the lake for part of the year or something like this, this is all part of the financial plan, right? Downsizing, upsizing, all of it.
It needs to be.
Yes. Okay.
If it's not part of the financial plan, you're setting yourself up for failure. I had some clients in yesterday. We were just doing a review, and they're looking at retiring this time next year. And he said, and I don't know where he got this, but he said, I know you told me to never buy a motorhome, but we want to buy a motorhome. I don't have a problem with motor. I have a camper myself.
Right. Yeah.
I think they're great. What I don't want you to do is buy a motorhome and then let the thing sit and never use it. And maybe that's what he was talking about. But and he's not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this motorhome.
The Mercedes, whatever van or whatever.
Yeah, he's looking at spending $30,000. So it's it's an older motorhome that would work for them, and I think he's already got it picked out. But I was able to plug that into his plan, and he was really concerned. He's like, "We really want to do this, but I think it's going to blow everything up." Had almost no impact on his overall plan. But one thing that we did talk about, because they want to buy that this year, he's working and he's making 6 figures. They make good money. If we took out $30,000 to buy this motorhome, we'd actually have to take out about $42,000
because of the taxes from
because
his
of the
IRA?
taxes.
Yeah.
If I have him finance it for the rest of this year, yes, he's going to have to make some payments and he's going to pay some interest. But then I pay it off in January. He won't have to. He'll have no tax liability because of his income plan. So the $30,000 mobile home or motorhome is going to cost him around $30,000 plus a little bit of interest instead of $42,000. So just by having a tax plan, being proactive and plugging that into the plan and figuring out how do we pay for this, is going to save him $12,000.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
It is. Well, you got to have a plan, and you have to have a planner.
But like, what if he didn't? Like, what if he wanted to buy the $300,000 motorhome, and he's like, you know what? I'm quitting next year, and we're just going to do it. And a couple years come down the pike, and now he has to go back to work.
He's back to work.
Because he didn't plan. Or he just took the $30,000 out this year, didn't withhold taxes, because I see this too. Then you have a nice surprise when you go to file next year if
And
you didn't withhold taxes.
That is never fun.
No. So, yeah, be proactive, put together a plan, and then we can test different things. Like, that's what's beautiful about the software we use. I can plug that transaction in before you actually take the money out. So we're going to know the impact it has on your plan before you pull the trigger. So that allows you to make those buying decisions with confidence. We want you to spend your money. We want you to, that's what you save for. You didn't retire to go sit on the couch and eat rice and beans. So let's go have fun, spend some of your money, and do the things you want to do.
Sure could use a burrito about now, though. I sure like rice and beans. All right.
That does sound good.
Call Stonebridge, 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. But that does make a lot of sense to me. There's no reason to throw that money. $12,000. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, especially on a $30,000 transaction.
Sure. That's just ridiculous. Well, good for them. I want reports. I hope he reports back to you
Yeah.
on their
Oh, he
big
will.
adventures. How about the just-in-case hoarder? Garage full of things they may someday need. And may I say, in the evening when you're driving home from work sometimes, more in the summer than not, when the garage is open in the neighborhood, garages are all open, and people have the thing full to the brim of just stuff.
Yep. I may have a sister
Yes.
that holds on to everything. Now, it
You
does
may have?
come into handy. I may have. It does come in handy when it's graduation time for my daughters, and she's got every picture that we've ever taken. You know, that's kind of handy. But yeah, I mean, you have to consider, though, everything that you keep that you think your kids want, your kids are going to have to go through, and a lot of it, I hate to say it, but a lot of it's going to go in the roll-off because they just don't want it, right? The things that you think are so important to them, like, have conversations with them while you're living.
Yes.
Give them the stuff that you think that they want while they're alive. Don't make them go through it when you're gone.
Right. I've seen that a couple of times, Mr. Gove. That is sage advice.
Thank you.
866-295-5146 for Stonebridge Well Systems. 866-295-5146. Give a call. Let's get things moving for you. Move that energy of moving your retirement plan into the, foreground instead of, someday in the background. Any closing comments? I got about a minute for you, Mr. Gove.
No, just looking at the notes here. So if you're retired and you're one of those people you're a DIY person and you're checking the market and updating the portfolio and doing all those things, I meet with DIY people all the time that, you get to the point where you just want to be retired. You want to go do the things that you want to do. And if you can't do those things because you're watching the market or watching the news or trading your account, like, that's no fun. And I can tell you from a lot of those people, when we look at the tax plan, by making some tweaks, we can save them a lot of money on taxes. So even if you leave the money invested how you want it invested, just by making some little tweaks on asset location, type of assets you're holding, and type of accounts, can make a massive difference. A lot of times people will say, well, will I make, back in taxes what I'm going to pay you in fees? Well, if we run the numbers and you're saving, $4 million in taxes over your lifetime, you're never going to pay me $4 million in fees.
Right, I'm telling you that right now.
You can, but you won't.
866-295-5146. See you next week, Mr. Stonebridge.
See ya.